Welcome back to the Rise with Anita podcast, or welcome if you're new here. So, this is the space where ambition meets embodiment and where soul meets strategy, and where we have conversations that help us understand not just how to succeed, but how to heal, grow, and become whole in the process. And today's conversation feels very important because I think we live in a world where so many people, especially men, have been taught to appear strong without ever having to process pain in the middle, how to lead without necessarily learning how to feel. And what I appreciate about today's guest is he brings such a grounded and honest perspective to both. Today I'm sitting down with Hooman Ghazanfari. I think I got that right. After 25 years of service as a captain with the Sacramento Fire Department, Hooman now works as an executive coach and consultant, helping people uncover their deeper stories, patterns, and beliefs shaping their lives and leadership. What makes his work so powerful is his ability to move beyond surface level solutions and help people understand the root of what's actually driving them emotionally, mentally, and relationally. And today we're exploring healing in a very real and human way, not just from the perspective of fixing yourself, but from your understanding of how people can move through pain, emotional suppression, survival patterns, and life experiences and transform them into self-awareness, connection, and growth. We're talking all things masculinity, leadership, healing, emotional safety, resilience, and what it looks like to live and stop surviving your life and actually really begin to understand yourself. But before we dive in, I'm going to invite both Hooman and the audience right now listening to this to just arrive with us for a moment. So if you're able to, go ahead and place your feet gently on the floor. Close your eyes, relax your shoulders, unclench your jaw, and take a second to just notice yourself and how you are feeling in this present moment. And we're going to take a slow inhale through the nose for 4. Hold for 4, 2, 3, 4, and gently release through your mouth for 6. And one more time, inhaling for 4, hold for 4, releasing gently through the mouth for 6, and just allowing ourselves to settle into this moment and connecting to a space of presence. And from that place, we will begin. Well, welcome, Hooman. I'm super excited for this. And
thank you for having me. I'm excited as well.
Always. I always start my podcast off with this question before we actually dive into the meat and potatoes of our conversation, which is, what is bringing you joy in this current season?
In this current season, what's bringing me joy is having my family together. My daughter's been off at school, and she's actually down in Southern California going to Long Beach State, and we miss her terribly. And so, for those of you in your audience who've had a child leave for school, you feel like a piece of you leaves with them. And so it was extremely sad when she first left. Like, you get so used to this little person who's running around the house and part of the family talking to you and asking for things. And of course they get older and they're still asking for things. but we have such a close-knit family. To have that severed by something so wonderful as being accepted to college and going away to school, we're extremely happy for. It's mixed emotions, but at the same time, it was very difficult when she left. So to have her home for the summer is very exciting for us, and we're very happy to have her with us. And so that's what really excites me today.
Beautiful answer. And it's funny to think about it because part of you as a parent, I'm sure, is like, yay, she's gaining her independence and learning. But at the same time, you're also like, I really liked having you at home and just having that connection because you're able to actually integrate and feel like, oh, I can see this person literally growing in front of my eyes. Where I feel like when you have that distance, you still recognize the changes in them, but it's at the same time like it hits you a little bit differently, I think.
You're absolutely right. You do see the changes, and even like a few months later, you talk on the phone and they're using grown-up words, like let's connect. I'm like, whoa, when did this happen? Um, but we're very excited for her, and it is part of the growth process that she is able to gain her independence and start to make her own decisions, and we empower her and support her. But at the same time, you do feel like a piece of you, for me, it feels like a piece of me is with her. And I've had to, for the lack of a better term, grieve that, that like our relationship has changed now. She's an adult, and in as much as she'll still call us and ask for insight and advice, and we offer it even sometimes when it's not asked for, as parents. It is something where we recognize her independence as an adult, and we're happy for her.
Beautiful answer. Actually, thinking about how kind of synchronistic this conversation is, I read a post you did this morning about your own time away at college and the expectations you had set forth, naturally, partially because of culture, and then also, I'm assuming your parents had immigrated here as well. So there comes a
Hmm.
little bit of this when you have the immigrant mentality, and again, I'm first generation myself
Hmm.
personally, but when you are raised in somewhat of an immigrant background, they have this American dream of what higher education looks like and what the next steps looks like. So do you find yourself also in that hat of like, oh, I have to really allow her to be open in what she's experiencing, even though a part of you might be wanting to guide her in a certain direction? Or how do you navigate that now?
Yeah, I like to step back from it and even look at like the expectations that our parents put on us, especially at an early age or at a young age. That like you're gonna either follow in their footsteps, or they want to see you do, like go to grad school, or become a doctor or what have you. And some of that is cultural. I mean, you see that in some cultures where there is a fierce expectation that you're going to do well in school, and for some kids it's difficult. Like school is not their vibe, but we certainly don't want to discourage school. Um, but for their own growth, you want them to go on the path that's going to be one that's going to help them thrive. And so, when we put too much of our expectations, and that's where, like, when I'm working with clients, oftentimes there's this distortion as to what they're supposed to do next, because like they've always been told what to do. Some of them, they've always, their life was outlined for them. Like, this is what you're going to do next. You're going to go to school. You're going to get a job. You're going to, whether you're going to work in a corporate firm, or you're going to go to grad school, and all this. Um, and so now they're there and they're anxious. Now they're there and they're unhappy because they're not feeling a fulfilled life. They're checking all the boxes, if you will. And look, I've been there myself. Where I thought I was doing the right thing by doing what my parents wanted me to do. But for me, fortunately, early on, I realized that, and I think I even said this in the post this morning. I realized that, first of all, those people, as much as they love you, they want the best for you, they think this is the path. It doesn't fit with what you see for yourself, and it becomes very difficult to continue to thrive in that environment when you don't feel like it's who you are, it's what you want to do. And so for me, fortunately, early on, I realized, look, I don't want to go pre-med. I want to go pre-fire. And so that's when I started to test with the fire service. And I still remember the conversation sitting down with my parents, and I wasn't asking them. I was telling them, and it's difficult to do, because even like when you look at in Iranian culture, the fire department is one of the bottom rungs of the ladder. Like, it's not, here in the United States, it's held in high regard because of the courage, the bravery, the dedication to service and duty. But in Iranian culture, it's like maybe one step above being a garbage man. So, like, it's not a point of emphasis for them, like bragging rights, if you will, that, oh yeah, my son's a firefighter. So, and I had to, of course, I was also raised Americanized, and that's a whole different story. But so I didn't really have a lot of those emphasis on elements of Persian culture anyway. But for me, really, it was like, look, this is what I want to do. This is my outlet for making a difference in people's lives, and that was really to the core of who I was. Is I'd been raised in an abusive environment, and I wanted to make a difference in other people's lives the way I wish someone had been there to make a difference in mine. And so that's what led me to wanting to test and become a firefighter. And it was more to the core of who I was and how I felt like I could make a difference in the world. So when it comes to my daughters, I have two of them. I give them suggestions. I check in with them about what they want to do with their lives and offer my insight, my support, my knowledge. But at the end of the day, I want the goals, the results to be theirs. Because long after I'm gone, they're gonna have to live with those results. They're gonna have to live with what the goals that they set and the actions that they took. And we have to be mindful of that today. That, like, look, I've even had clients where, like, their mom is on another continent, and that person still calls them and has this impact on their life where they're asking them what they're doing, and they're sharing their disappointment and everything else, and it just becomes so difficult for them to thrive and step outside of that. So that's some of the work that we do, is to really clear the mental clutter and remove the noise so that people can focus on what they want to do and get clarity on what they want to do.
Beautiful. And I love that you are in this like hybrid of like, I've been through it, so I'm also not going to enforce. But at the same time, what do you want to do? And it's funny because one thing commonly that we discuss in our household here is because, again, I think any form of Middle Eastern or Armenian, Egyptian, whatever background you
Mm-hmm.
have, typically parents don't ask their kids, what do you want? It's just kind of like, I know what's best for you, so I'm going to tell you what you want.
Right, that's exactly right.
But it was funny because one thing my mom constantly asks is like, well, did you ever have a conversation with me about what I would like to do and what I saw my life as? And the answer is always no, because of course in that generation they didn't know better.
Mm-hmm.
But so it'll be, there's these aspects where you'll find, now that I'm like in my 30s and I've definitely swayed away from the traditional path, they
Mm-hmm.
go, how are you letting your daughter do this? Or how do you allow her to take these trips? And she goes, well, she's in her 30s. It's what she wants to do. And she's the one who has to live with these choices. So it's such a complete different shift. And I do think that that cross cultural, when you're raised partially American, partially still raised with your own culture, there's this kind of like dance you do of where they're totally different and it's kind of clashing, but at the same time you're trying to navigate both worlds.
Right. And, like, I like to take it back to the question of, like, when someone is I'm just going to say it, like, projecting their anxiety onto me. I want to check in with them and find out what is the result they're looking for. Like, for example, like, what are you worried about when it comes to my future? Are you worried that I'm going to be happy? Because this is what's going to create happiness for me. It's not going to be being a doctor. It's going to be being a firefighter in my
Mm-hmm.
in my case, right? So, and like, as you said, whether it's generational or age or cultural, some people just don't have the self-awareness. They're just like, well, yeah, you don't know it right now, but that's the only way you're going to be happy is if you're doing basically what I tell you. But as long as you're in some sort of like a role as a doctor, engineer, what have you. So checking in with the person about like what is it that that you're worried about? Because there's things that I still worry about with my daughter. Like she's off at college. If she were to ask me, like, well, what is it you're worried about? Like, I think my top three would be like you're focusing on your studies, that you're safe, and you're making good decisions. Those would be my top three, right? And some of those are kind of go hand in hand, right? And because we're not
Hmm.
there, you've prepped them the best you can to make those great decisions. And sometimes they're going to make mistakes, and that's okay too. And even in coaching, it's okay. Like you don't have to be perfect. We want progress, not perfection. So if you're struggling in some aspect of your life, you bring it forward and we talk about it. But when it comes back to that parental figure, we just want to know, like, well, what is it that you're worried is going to happen next? Well, you're not going to be happy doing this, or they have their own definition of success that really doesn't match yours. If there's a way to put them at ease, maybe you can try to do that. But at the end of the day, you have to make sure that you're at ease. You have to make sure that what you're doing is in alignment with who you are and that you're at peace with what you're doing because you're the one who has to live with those results. Long after that person's either moved away or, God forbid, perished, you're the one who has to live with those results. So we have to bring it back to the person. And that's where, yes, I do bring in that accountability piece to help people realize that, like, not from like a I'm holding you accountable as as someone in the parental role, but holding you accountable to what you said you wanted to do. Like if you told me that you um, were setting this financial goal, we would look at like, okay, what's it going to take for you to get there? Well, and you might say, well, I may have to, make more investment decisions that are going to be beneficial. You might want to cut Starbucks, whatever it is. But those are your decisions. Those are your goals, and everything you're doing, all your actions are either in alignment with what you want to do or not. And really, when we're doing accountability, it's more to ensure that there's alignment between what the person wants to do and what they're actually doing. So I like to use the word alignment as opposed to accountability. Accountability sounds like I'm parenting you. Alignment sounds more like this is what you said you wanted to do. And so now we're both going to look at that list of the things you said you want to do and see where we're at when it comes to alignment.
Beautiful answer. So, off the cuff, what do you find is the biggest reason why most people don't stay in alignment with what they say they want?
Yeah, honestly, I think there's a little bit of internal conflict which leads to anxiety, and by internal conflict for me is a pretty big umbrella. There's a lot of like self-limiting beliefs, harsh inner critic, um, you know, um, like perception that things have to be perfect, all those different things. So some people are waiting around. Some people are waiting for their next marching orders from somebody else. And so what all those things do is keep us in this sort of holding pattern, right? Like where we aren't fully launching into the things that we want to do because there's these obstacles in the way. Like what's so and so going to think? What are my friends and neighbors going to think? Am I ready for this? Sometimes if we can't picture that outcome, that can be a challenge too, because we we have a tendency, some of us do anyway, to shy away from making decisions on things where we don't know the outcome. And by that I mean
Hmm.
there's like risk involved, right? There's an inherent risk with, like, let's just say I want to leave my corporate job and start my own business or switch careers. There's a lot of unknowns there, and that can be very difficult for people to navigate. With that being said, sometimes we get forced into that position, whether it's because your current work environment's unbearable, or you've reached a level of frustration, or really even something that's pulling you towards it. Like, I've always wanted to do this, and this is going to be so much fun for me. Those things can be very powerful in pushing in that direction. But there's always, for people who are having that struggle internally, there's always a little bit of a tug of war there of like, am I going to be able to do this or am I going to stay where I'm at? And so that's where we want to unpack all that and find out where that conversation lies. Like, is it like my own stuff, or is it stuff that people have like fed me that's creating
Hmm.
confusion for me and makes it hard for me to really lock in and do what I want to do?
Beautiful answer. I was always thinking about the conflicting beliefs, and right now I'm running a group program, and I was telling the ladies just last week where you can say what you want, but if there's an underlying conflict or you somehow, and this is where most people find that they wouldn't necessarily think, but I was like, if you have some sort of benefit from the conflicting belief, you're going to continue to stay in that same place. And they were like,
Hmm.
a benefit from a belief? And I was like, yeah. And so I use the example commonly of like the person who really wants to make a certain income, but then they don't want to pay the taxes for it.
Oh, right.
So it's like naturally you're kind of already putting yourself at that, okay, I'm just not going to reach that income because I don't want to navigate the tax situation. So it's interesting to think about how we use these benefits to keep us from getting in alignment with what we know is better for us or what is more true to us.
Right. Um, this reminds me of like our internal reward system, and sometimes it can be a little bit skewed because we tend to think of things as either like typically. I'm going to start over so you can edit this. We tend to think of things as being a positive reward, but there's
Mhm.
also a negative reward system. And if I grew up with negative feedback, then I could be seeking out that negative feedback in the environment around me when it comes to the reward for my actions. For example, one of the things that I was told when I was younger is that I wasn't going to amount to anything, and it was from my one of my parents. My mom would get upset, and then she would blurt things out like that were hateful things. She just couldn't control herself. And so, but as a child, that gets internalized. That becomes a part of who you are. The person is being sort of rejecting and saying these awful things. And so now is that going to become a self-fulfilling prophecy? Is that a part of who I am? Is that a part of my identity? And I have to like be able to shed that and distance myself from that and realize that it's not. And I did have to do that. But in the meantime, I went through periods in my life where I was screwing up. I mean, I'll be honest with you and your listeners. Getting fired from jobs and making mistakes and really put myself in positions where I was going to not be successful. And so by by realizing that that wasn't working for me, and then stepping back from that and making that pivot and reducing that mental clutter and noise that came from other people, I was able to realize that, look, this is self-sabotaging behavior. This was instilled in you as a product of who you're going to become. But now you need to change that narrative and change it to something that's going to benefit you. And it has to be based on what your own needs are. And, it's like clearing that mental stack, deciding on what you want to do next, and then taking action. And so when we can do that, then we can make that pivot and move things in a direction with momentum towards what we actually want to do, as opposed to what someone else is going to happen in our lives.
Absolutely. There's so much to unpack right there, but I'm curious for you.
Sure.
What's coming through is basically you had this constant narrative, and you mentioned that
Mm-hmm.
you had to take the time to come out and really rewire it, is the way I'll put it. So, for the listeners, what's a tangible way for them to start working on these, call it implanted limiting beliefs, that would be a good first step if they just constantly have heard something on repetition from maybe a parent or a teacher or whatever it is, that has skewed with how they look at themselves or their self-worth.
Yeah, well, I like what we did at the beginning of this podcast, where we did a breathing exercise, because that's where you can become mindful of the thoughts that are actually running, right? Like there's sometimes our actions and our behaviors are disconnected from our true self, and they're even disconnected from our thoughts. Like we just or maybe even frankly they are connected, but we're just not consciously aware of it, right? Like we're going through life and we're making mistakes and things are going the way we want them to. And it's not until we actually pause and really reflect on what's going on that we realize what's running. So when we can do that, we can like reflect on it and understand the thought process that led to the results that we're getting, then we can refocus. And once we can refocus, then we can come up with an action plan and then get the results that we're looking for. But a lot of that starts with that mindfulness and doing meditation and really understanding where are those challenges for me today. And part of the work that I do with people, because sometimes it's hard, right? Like it's hard for us to put a lens on ourselves and really understand what's running for us. And so when we can have that person that we can process it with, then they can help you see it. They can help you see your blind spots. They can help you even step back and like repeat that thought process in a way that you can then realize, okay, yeah, I can't believe I just said that out loud. I can't believe that that's the thought that's running for me. Because once you repeat it or someone reflects it back to you, sometimes it doesn't even make sense. And then that's when you realize, oh, okay, like, even though I didn't think that I was sabotaging myself, it turns out that I am. I mean, just through my actions, I can see right now that like this isn't going in the right direction. So helping them see that can then help them make that pivot to doing the things that they want to do.
Yeah. It's interesting because the beauty of working with a coach, and I just experienced this on Monday myself, is I was
Mm-hmm.
going through a session. It's a heavy season for me, is the way I'll put it. And
Mm.
at the end of the session, my coach reflected back, like, you're doing quite well. I can see so much progress, even from
Yeah.
how we started off the year. And it's not necessarily in like a parental way, but because of the coaching relationship naturally brings out the depth, you're able to be like, oh, well, there's a version of me that would have probably not handled this circumstance or this thought process or this challenge I'm navigating in a way that would have been conducive, where now I'm just not making it mean something about me, because everything comes
Mm-hmm.
back to what are you making it mean.
Mm. Right.
And so it's interesting just to have that person to kind of bat off. And it was funny because even in our conversation, I was talking about a specific challenge I'm navigating, and he was like, okay, so what's the bigger picture here? And I naturally answered, like, oh, well, what if there's a higher purpose to this whole thing, even though this situation currently is very annoying? And
Mm-hmm.
we were going through these different causes, and I remember just saying, you know, I think I just needed someone to like kind of like play bat with, because I was able to throw out and articulate what I was thinking, and he was seeing it from his perspective. And so it's this like natural alignment that goes between coach and client. So it's very beautiful. Shifting gears for a second though. So
Sure.
you've spent 25 years in fire service,
Mm-hmm.
and it's an environment that is high intensity stress, and you're expected literally to stay calm under pressure.
Mm-hmm.
So what did that experience teach you about human beings and how they navigate just challenges?
Yeah. The One of the experiences that I took away from that, one of the learning points that I took away from that is that we all have our own perspective on things, right? Like our own context and the way that we're seeing a situation. Um, I remember going on fires and really like, as a captain, I'm doing my own sort of processing on the way to the incident. And I can hear other captains on the radio and they're doing their own processing. We're kind of sharing our thought process on what we're going to do when we arrive. And then when you get there, you realize that some people tend to get a little excited about things that aren't really that big of a deal, and then some people are able to really stay calm and process and really take things in the moment and get their work done. And it really helped me understand that people's wiring and some of their triggers can really cloud their ability to have clear judgment when it comes to like what to do next. Um, and so then it's like, well, the question might become, well, how do you fix that? Well, as we talked about earlier, some of it's the awareness piece, awareness of what's running, and some of it's through practice and really training your brain that, like, first of all, some things have to be automatic. Like when I get up at 3 in the morning to go on a fire, I have to have certain things that I've trained my brain that that's how we're going to handle this. Like I can't show up on a high-rise fire at 3 in the morning and like be like, oh, I've never been here before. Let me let me get out the playbook. Like that's not how it works. And so part of that is through the selection process that they want to see who's trained and prepare themselves to be successful. And some of that is after you get the job, you really have to be a student of the game. And so when it comes to working with people, those are the two main areas of focus. One is the first one, which is to train your brain for some of those interactions. And the other one is to be a student of the game. And in some ways they run hand in hand. But, if I use an example of like being in a boardroom, and I've had like female clients that are part of a corporation and now they're in the C-suite or they're in a room full of men, and it can be a little intimidating, right? Like some of them are macho, some of them are misogynistic, and they're talking down or, saying that, oh, Anita's too sensitive today and that sort of thing. So if you haven't trained yourself to prepare for that, it can catch you off guard. It can be upsetting. It can be off-putting. It could be like, what is it about me that's making this person act this way, right? You internalize it, make it about you, and then you end up feeling hurt, helpless, confused, anxious, sad, disappointed. And so, like, being able to step back from that and train yourself that, like, look, first of all, it's not about you. Okay, this person's a jerk to everybody, chances are, or to all women. And then showing up in a way that's professional. You can even remove that context of like, look, you're trying to insert this context that I'm a woman here. I'm not going to let you. I'm here to do my job. We're all hired to work together here. I'm a part of this corporation. I'm a part of this board. I'm here to do my job. Okay. Now, if they keep working in that direction, then we have a problem, and you can certainly address that. But we don't want the person to get too stuck in the context of what other people are perceiving. The other thing, the other example, and the solution that I was talking about was to be a student of the game. And so some of it is being aware of corporate dynamics. Some of it's being aware of the laws and policies around some of the stuff that you're dealing with. And some of it is being a student of who you are, how you show up in these situations, and developing that self-awareness around experimenting and checking your results, but also starting with your own approach. Like someone may have made a joke and they made a joke to everybody, and you're taking it the wrong way because you're thinking, oh, they're saying that because of me. And that doesn't have to be the case. And when we can train our brain to realize that, okay, well, look, maybe this person just made a joke. Now, if it was a directed, pointed joke, then I get that. That could be offensive. But we don't want to get too stuck in other people's narratives and context. So by being a student of the game, we can realize some of the dynamics that exist at work and not get stuck there.
Nicely answered. I mean,
Thank you.
it's beautiful to see how you also tied it into what you're currently doing now, because really you've been a master of just watching people under high stress situations. So I'm curious.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, it's okay. If you have something to share, go ahead.
Oh, no, well, I was just going to say, and some of it's the public too. They rely on us to show up in a certain way, and so by training ourselves to be ready to respond, we can hit the ground running and handle a variety of disastrous situations. I mean, you're seeing people on their worst day, and so there was a certain amount of like having to shut down the parts of myself that normally I would make available to people Like for example, if we show up and this person's house is on fire, like my first thought is not to go over and console them. My first thought is to go put the fire out, right? So I have to shut down that empathy piece of who I am to be able to get that job done. With that being said, then there is a time and a place for it where now you have to come out of autopilot and be able to have that human element as well, so that you have this balanced approach to helping people.
Mm, beautifully answered. So I'm curious because many men learn very early on how to suppress emotion in order to survive or
Mm.
succeed or to be accepted. When did you first begin noticing that pattern in the world around you?
I think I first started noticing it when I started to get in touch with my own emotions. I mentioned about my difficult childhood and dealing with childhood trauma. It wasn't until my mid 20s when I had reached my limit. Like I went on this road trip down to Southern California with my parents and my brother in the car, and my mom was berating me all the way down and all the way back. And we were down there for several days, and she wouldn't stop. And when I got back, I realized, look, I can't do this anymore. I got to get help. And and through that process and beginning that work, I started to express some of the emotions that inevitably were trapped inside of me, and just really start to work on that grief process of all the awful things that I had seen growing up or been a part of, and then even some of the stuff I was seeing in real time at work, some of the traumatic experiences I was coming across. And so when I was able to process all that and work through it and get to a better place, I was then more comfortable and able to access my emotions, my own emotions. And it was a model for me. Like I wasn't raised by a father with access to his emotions and ability to express them. He was actually a very sort of um, aloof, is the best word I can use. And so I didn't have any kind of a way to even talk to him about what my emotions were or anything that was coming up for me. So those are all things that I had to learn on my own. But I started to realize that in the people around me, especially men, that like, we're not given access to that by our peers, really, but more to the point, like our family and our society. Like there is this culture where, if you're going to be tough, you have to. I'm going to put air quotes in so we can say, if you're going to be tough, then you're going to hold those emotions in and you're going to be stoic. However, what that leads to, I mean, your pain has to go somewhere, right? So if you're not just going to cry, if you're not going to just like let it out and talk about it and feel it and let go of it, it has to go somewhere. And that's where a lot of people run into trouble, because then they start to try to suppress it and push that pain down, and they start doing other things that are, like we could just call them self-sabotaging, but things like drinking, gambling, arguing with their spouse, abusing drugs, overeating, showing up late to work and sabotaging things at work. I mean, there's a whole list of things that people do to just push that pain down, because the last thing they want to do is have that pain right here where they have to face that pain. When you can face that pain and you can like release it and let go of it, then you show up in a different way in every aspect of your life. And I'm just speaking from personal experience. Like this isn't something I read in the book. Like this is from my own personal experience. I've been through a lot, and looking back on it, if I had had access to my pain earlier on, my life would have been a lot easier, frankly.
Nicely answered. So I'm curious for a woman or a man listening to this right now
Yeah,
going, okay, that sounds great. I'm going to access my pain. But I also have real jobs. I have a family to take care of. I can't
sure.
necessarily sit and feel through my emotions right now. What would you tell that person?
Well, I have a couple answers off the bat. The first one is take an hour each week, set it aside, and go to therapy. And that's an investment that will pay off in huge dividends in the long run for you. If you're struggling with pain from whatever source, like whether it's pain in your current relationship or friendships or pain from your past, going to counseling and getting therapy can be immensely helpful in giving you the relief you need to get through your day and through your week. The other strategy that I like to share with people, and again, you didn't put me up to this, Anita, but it's the breathing exercises, because I do them too. I mean, when you said that, I just smiled. I'm like, this is beautiful, because it's such an important element of who we are. Like when we meditate and we take those deep breaths, like in that moment, that physically, like that's the only thing you're doing is taking that breath. And so when you can remember that and just use that to remind yourself to stay in the present moment, then you realize that, okay, right now, as I'm focusing on this breath, nothing else is happening in my life. Nothing else is impacting me the way it did in the past. Even if I had anxiety about what's going to happen in the future, it's not happening right now in this moment. So the strategy that I use is to ask the person if it would be helpful for them to do a breathing exercise before an event. Like you and I did it before this podcast. I would invite them to do it like before they pull in. Well, not before they pull in, but once they pull in the parking lot at work, before you go in, take a deep breath so you don't take everything in with you from home. And then at the end of the day, when you drive home, you pull in the garage or you pull in the driveway, just sit there, put the car in park, and just take a few minutes to unpack the stuff from work that's really bothering you and release it. Like, your family doesn't want all that. You don't want to dump out all that on them. So just take a few breaths and release that stuff. Just set it aside and say, look, this stuff will be here in the morning when I leave for work. And then I can try and unpack up some of it when I get in the parking lot. But don't let it become part of you and stick with you in a way that's going to create the results you're not looking for.
Well, I love the synergy here because one thing I am constantly doing is what I call a transition breath, and that's exactly what
Mm.
it is. So it doesn't necessarily have to be transitioning from home to work, but sometimes I'll even do it between Zoom calls or just like if I'm gonna make a phone call to a family member and I've been on a coaching call hat because the version of me that needs to show up for my grandparents is not going to be the version of me that needs to show up on a podcast or with a
Hmm.
client. And so
Right,
it's
right.
differentiating that. And so I love that you said that. So just all things alignment. I'm just super excited.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
I'm curious, in your perspective, though, why do you think vulnerability is still so uncomfortable for many men?
Honestly, I think there's a fear there. And I think the fear, if I'm just being perfectly honest, is a fear of rejection.
Yeah.
It's like, and so here I am. I'm coaching some of the spouses in your audience, some of the wives. Like your husband wants to be vulnerable with you, but he's not sure how you're going to take it. Like like if he were to come home and start crying, would you tell him to suck it up? Would you think less of him? Would you think that there's something wrong with him? That he's weak? Like these are some of the things that are running for your husband. So now you're gonna go home and tell him this. Hey, this fireman was on Anita's podcast, and he's spouting off about this stuff, and he's gonna go, oh, who? Like I never heard of that guy. He's full of it. Don't listen to him. But see, even that is his defense. His defenses are going up. His defenses are like, well, what? Like, where'd this come from? I'm not ready for this. I'm going to attack it. Best
Yeah.
defense is a good offense, right? So that's how it's going to go. But I assure you, underneath all that, underneath all the smoke and mirrors and the countermeasures that he's going to deploy, there's a guy that wants to feel seen and heard and wants to be able to express his emotions,
Mm.
especially especially when he's pissed off, especially when you're pissed off. Like you guys, that's the time where everyone needs to stop and just check in with each other and understand what's going on. Like what are the emotions that are coming up, right? Because 9 times out of 10, it's something, someone, the project's running late at work, right? He's under a lot of pressure. He comes home and then, you ask him, what he wants to do for dinner and he loses his mind, right? And you think, well, what got into him? Why is he being such a jerk? Has nothing to do with you. He just needs a place to go with what's going on for him. So, like when that friction starts, if we can both just kind of pump the brakes and go, okay, so what's going on right now? What is everything okay? Like what happened at work today? If we can just check in with each other about that, and then leave that space for them to just really talk about, yeah, I'm anxious. I'm anxious that this isn't going well. I could get called into the office and written up. I could get fired. We have a mortgage. All this other stuff, and then being able to attack it as a team rather than as adversaries.
Beautiful answer, and it really makes me think. The more I've been, call it, observing men as a
Sure.
whole, and it's both in personal dynamics, even just friendships and whatnot, the more I usually am like, there's more there that they're
Oh
not
yeah.
saying. And interestingly enough, couple of weeks ago, my grandpa literally was like, I observe everything, I just don't say much.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember he and I were sitting, and I was like, well, what are you thinking? And he was just like, what am I thinking? And I was like, yeah, what's on your mind? What are you thinking, or what are you feeling? What are your worries? And because he is older, I asked him, I go, do you have any fears?
Hmm.
And so it made me realize, though, because after the fact, my grandma and I were talking, and she goes, he never talks to me about this stuff. And I was like,
Hmm.
but you have to give him the space to. And so it's interesting because I think we oftentimes, as women, will say, well, why doesn't he tell me what he thinks? Or why isn't he more open with his emotions? And yet we also don't provide that open space to let the person communicate and articulate. And I remember I had a close friend, and I was like, something's bugging you. And he was just like, no, no, I'm fine. And I was like, okay. And I was like, you're a lot more sensitive than you seem. I know that you
Mm-hmm.
try to like use your muscles and act like Mr. Tough Guy, but like there's something that's actually bugging you. If you don't want to talk to me, that's fine, but I know it's bugging you.
Right.
And he was just like, how did you do that? And I was like, because I observe people.
Mm-hmm.
As coaches, we tend to observe the patterns in a person. And so it's interesting, though, when we think about how if we want to create vulnerability in men, we also have to allow them to have the space. So I'm interested, how does this work in terms of your marriage for you personally?
So before I answer that question, I'm not avoiding it. um, we have to discern between people who are deflecting
Hmm.
and people who don't have access to their emotions, right?
Hmm.
The story you mentioned with your friend, you you realize he has that potential, that capacity for intimacy, and that capacity to talk about his emotions, which then, and you're good at reading people as a coach, that tipped you off to, I'm going to explore this with him. Some people just don't, they're just stone cold. They just don't have access to their emotions. So you could talk to them and ask them about it until you're blue in the face, and they won't even be able to tell you. Like they don't even know. Like,
Hmm.
what's coming up for you right now? Nothing. I'm just sitting here and you started rattling that potato chip bag and it pissed me off, and, and it's like, okay, well, I guess I can stop, but just let me know if you want to talk. I don't want to talk. It's like, okay, well, that's fine. Um, so being able to discern between the two can be very important. Coming back to your question, how does this play out in my marriage? So, Well, I'll say this, like my wife is in the same space I am as a therapist. So we both work with individuals and people on conflict resolution and those sorts of things. So we kind of have to model that ourselves. And so the practice that we've gotten into is just basically what I described earlier, which is to say that like when my wife and I have a disagreement or we sense that there's tension rising, we do pause and check in with the other person to find out what's coming up for them right now, or if there's something going on during their day. It wasn't always like that, but we've learned to foster that sort of relationship with each other, so that when we are having a bad day, we can realize it. And the first place I go to, and I would with respect to like I do have to own if I am doing something that's irritating the other person or creating those results that are undesirable. First place I have to go to if I walk in the room and say, "Hey, how's your day going?" and or "Hey, what are we doing for dinner?" and my wife blows up at me, I have to realize it's not about me. Something happened during her day that has put her in a state where she's irritable. She is lashing out.
Fancy.
And like if
Yeah.
my wife's listening, you don't actually do this, you're a saint, but like but these things happen in relationships, right? So when that person lashes out, we don't want to take that personally and take it internally and say, oh, it's because of me, or that person's attacking me, they're just having a bad day. When we can realize that, then we can diffuse. We can just sort of check in with the person, find out what's going on, find out what happened, and get them to access their emotions or get them to access their thoughts and their experiences for the day, and really talk about what's going on. And it might be something that I did several days ago, right? Like I didn't like what you said, you know, um, and that's okay. You know, if she's been hanging on to that or I've been hanging on to it. Typically, the other thing is we have a rule in our household that we don't go to bed angry.
Beautifully said.
So regardless of like if something happened over lunch or over dinner or what have you, like we work it out. We don't call each other names, and then we also don't go to bed angry. So we talk it out and we get to a place of resolution. So that way, no one's carrying that with them when they're trying to rest.
Beautiful answer. So I'm curious in your perspective as someone who's been doing this for a while.
Mhm.
Do you also feel that emotional suppression ends up showing up physically and relationally and professionally? I think the answer is yes. But what do you
Like
commonly
on a
feel?
personal level,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I mean, here's the thing, Anita. Like we're human beings, right? We're gonna have a reaction when there's something that's upsetting, right? So it's not about being a robot and not expressing emotion, you know, or even being Spock for some of the Trekkies out there. Not everything's going to be logical, right? So it's not about being a stoic and just like, well, that doesn't bother me. You know, you get awful news, it's going to be upsetting. You know, we're human beings. Um, I think the thing that I work with people on is sort of that reflex arc, right? Like, like, is this something I need to respond to right away? And if do need to respond to it, how do I want to respond to it to to elicit the outcome that I'm looking for? And one of the formulas I'm borrowing, I think I got it from Jack Canfield. I don't know who he got it from, but it's the event plus the response to the event equals your outcome, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we have the event, like let's just say I get cut off in traffic, right? And I mean, we've all had that happen, right? Like you're driving along, minding your own business, might even be in the slow lane, someone's trying to get to their exit, and you're playing classical music, and you're just chilling going down the freeway, and then whoosh, you know, car cuts in front of you. It's irritating, right? It pisses you off. Now, what I do with that's going to create my outcome, right? Now I can take that exit, follow him, honk at him, and put my hands in the air, and what's the deal? Now I'm late to my next appointment. I'm expending a lot of energy and emotion towards this person who's either clueless or the wife's pregnant. All the stuff. They're late to work. All the different possible outcomes.
Variable.
Yeah, but it's more about that relationship with myself, understanding my triggers, understanding my emotions, even understanding the context of, okay, that was upsetting. Like, how far do I want to take this right now? And do I have that that room right now to express that emotion, or do I need to deal with it first? Like, I remember getting a phone call that my daughter had been in an accident. Fortunately, she was okay. And actually, at the time, I was down in Southern California. We live in Sacramento. Um, but you had that instant emotion of like, oh my God, is my child okay? And then as you start to like, okay, yes, I'm getting more information, and there's like, I'm on my way to the airport anyway, so there's nothing to do any faster. I'm not going to drive any faster. It's not going to help anybody. Then you can kind of bring the situation back to some sort of an equilibrium where you can deal with it on with a lot more clarity.
Beautiful. So I'm curious, just from your perspective, what is the actual difference between a reaction and a response?
Hmm. So that's a great question. I look at a reaction as being something that happens in the moment. Like I it's my initial impression of
Hmm.
the context of the situation and how I'm going to then respond to it. The response is for me is a sort of a pre-planned, and part of it's going back to my roots as a first responder. It's a pre-planned um, reaction to the event. so but it's not something that happens right away. It's something that I wait, I process, and then I react.
Beautiful. So, what kind of transformation are you currently most passionate about helping people create today?
The transformation I'd love to help people with is to take them from a place of stress, anxiety, and frustration that's born out of their trauma from their past, and help them transform into someone who has more inner peace in their life and clarity and a sense of happiness and fulfillment. And really what that process looks like is bearing that trauma and releasing it. And that's the work that they would do with me. And then also, I think I mentioned to you that my wife does extensive work with psychedelic assisted psychotherapy. And so that can be transformational in and of itself in a very short amount of time. It can take someone who's been through trauma and help them release that from their mind so that they can live a more happy and fulfilled life. Because really, like, we all those experiences I shared with you, they were still a part of who I was until, for the most part, I processed them and released them. I say for the most part because I still have stuff. It's just not come out in a journey yet. But for the most part, I've done the work. I've processed and released a lot of the difficult experiences I've had, which is why I can sit here and talk to you about them matter of factly and not have an emotional breakdown and not feel nervous or triggered or anxious or unsettled because I've done the work. And that's the thing that I can do for that's the process that I follow in doing that work for other people, is to help them like bear that trauma so they understand that it's there and how it's impacting their life, and then help them heal from it so that they have that clarity and that focus so that they can move forward and live their life with happiness and fulfillment.
Beautiful. And where can people connect with you or work with you further? Just so you know, there is
Yeah.
a fire round after this.
There's a what?
Quick fire round. So, but
Oh,
wrapping
fake
up.
fire round. Okay, okay. So my website is www.gauzecoaching.com. And I'm on LinkedIn as well as Instagram and Facebook. And yeah, if they want to book a free session with me, I can actually send them a free gift. It's help design. It's designed to help them reduce their mental clutter, and I can send that to them once they book their free session with me from my website. So I and it's a discovery call. It's free, and so we just talk about where they're stuck and how I can help them, and just help them. First, the first intention of the call is always to build trust. Like, I want to connect with people and help them see that, like, they can unpack and talk about anything they want in that space that we have together, whether it's a Zoom call or it's in person. If they're in the Sacramento area, it's in person. I've done Zoom calls with people around the country and around the world. So it's meeting them where they're at and helping them unpack what's going on in their life in that moment. And then from there, we come up with a plan. I can tell them how I can help them, and we're off and running.
Beautiful. So, quick fire round. Think a word to a sentence. First inclination that comes up. A book that changed your life. Think and Grow
So,
Rich doesn't count.
oh, come on. So, a word to a sentence, like take a word, put it into a sentence.
No, it can be anything from a word to a sentence.
Anything from a word to a sentence. Um, okay, well, I'm gonna have to pick another self-help book. No, yeah, I would say Success Principles by Jack Canfield was instrumental for me. That led to me getting into, well, hiring a coach and then getting into coaching myself, because that coach helped me identify the fact that I have been mentoring and coaching people throughout my life, and that I wanted to be able to provide that for others in a more meaningful way. And that came out of, you know where it started? I'll just, since we're here. So I was scrolling through the internet one day, and I was bored. I was procrastinating, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I came across Ty Lopez. You know who that is?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He's walking through his mansion, and then he went out in the garage. He's got a bookshelf, and he's got a Lamborghini and everything. And it really caught my attention. And then he started talking about his success principles. And then when I went and looked at the comment section, someone said, "Oh, he took these from Jack Canfield's success principles." So then I went and read Jack Canfield's book, and then that was what really launched me into what I'm doing today. So
Beautiful.
thank you,
I
Ty.
love the background story. A word that describes the current season you're in.
Current season that I'm in, peace.
Nice. A daily non negotiable that fuels your power.
In one word, or
Yes, a word or a
oh,
sentence.
the non-negotiable for me is time with my family. Like, everything else in my life is secondary to that.
Beautiful.
Because it's like everything else is in support of that. Frankly, like when I look at work, work isn't there for me to have an identity about or brag about, or you know count the number of cars in the garage or the dollars in my wallet. Work is there for me to be able to enjoy the time with my family and to really be fully present and a part of everything that's going on at home. So anything else that comes up has to fall into alignment with that. And so when it comes to the non-negotiable, that's first and foremost before anything else. With respect to my health and wellness, so but that even then, actually, now that I think about it, even that is because I want to walk my daughters down the aisle, right? So if I want to do that, then I have to stay healthy. So even that's in alignment with my family. So my family still comes first and foremost for me.
Nice. A lesson that life taught you the hard way.
I'm gonna have to go with humility on that one. Yes, I've you there's ways where society teaches you that, like, yeah, when you have some successes, you're supposed to flash them, right? Brag about them, or signal that you're a badass or a big shot or what have you. And what I've learned over time is a lot of that is just people like overcompensating for their own insecurities, and and then myself included, frankly. And so when I was able to step back from that, then I realized that, like, through humility, you get everything else. You get the respect for others, consideration, kindness, love, empathy, like all that stuff runs through humility. And humility is like, look, um, I'm just another person on this planet. And look, I've been around some big shots, and I'm not going to name names, but I've been around some big shots. Some of them are humble; they're wonderful people. Some of them are,
Not so
they walk on
humble and not so
water.
nice.
Yeah, yeah. So, but yeah, like realizing that, okay, we have a finite amount of time on this earth. Enjoy the moment, enjoy yourself, enjoy your family, enjoy the people around you. Take it all in, because in a couple of generations, no one's going to remember who you were, and we have to make peace with that. Like, look, I'm just going to, I love my family, love my kids, and I'm just going to enjoy every moment that I have, and be grateful and humble, and everything else will work itself out.
Beautiful. Best advice you've ever received in a single sentence.
That's the advice I've ever received in a single sentence. Um, well, the best advice that I've received in a single sentence is to be humble, but also that relationships matter. I think when it comes to whether it's your personal, professional life, the relationships in your life are paramount to not just your success, but also to the success of those people, the interactions that you're in. So when I look at how I want to approach any given situation, I'm always taking that relationship into consideration, even if it's something where I have to, like, as a boss, which I don't have any employees, but if I did, like even when I was in the fire department, when it came time to discipline somebody or give them some sort of a notice of corrective action or coach them on some aspect of their performance or their behavior, I always wanted to come in with the emphasis on how important it is to maintain those relationships. Like, we and I'll just leave you with this story, um, because this is really where this person made a huge difference in my life, and I'm not even sure that she knew it. As I mentioned, having this awful upbringing, there was this lady who was my mom's cousin, who was an aunt to me, and that lady, in the short amount of time in my life that I spent with her, she made such an impact on my life. She helped me see that there are kind people out there, and people that love me and support me and could keep me safe. And after I left Iran, I didn't have that anymore. So I had to hang on to that memory of her for the next 15 to 20 years until I was able to get therapy and to really put the rest of my life back together. And to this day, um, her name is my younger daughter's middle name. So
Beautiful.
yeah, I'll never forget her and what she did for me and my family. So, um, my point with that is, don't ever think that you're not making a difference in people's lives just with an ounce of kindness a day. Be there for the people around you, and love them, and foster those relationships, and um, and enjoy your time together.
Beautiful. And lastly, what's one thing you want women to stop apologizing for?
Um, I want women to stop apologizing for asserting themselves, speaking up.
Beautiful.
I
Well,
think that
Hooman.
if I could, oh,
Oh, go
I
ahead.
was going to
No, go ahead.
elaborate on that a little bit.
Go ahead.
Um, I think that now more than ever, there's an emphasis on that, but I still talk to women every day who feel like they're self conscious of how they're going to be perceived if they speak up, whether it's in a meeting or in their relationships or any aspect of their lives. They've been conditioned to keep things to themselves, and that's just not the world we live in anymore. And if someone is trying to make you feel that's the norm, that's it's not the norm. And so to be able to speak up, stand up for yourself, stand up for the people around you, and just stand up for what's right. If you see something, say something, and don't let anyone tell you that you're not allowed to, or that you're not entitled to.
Well, thank you for that. Such a beautiful answer and such a beautiful reminder to really own your voice. So,
Yeah,
Hooman, I'm really
thank you.
grateful for this conversation
No,
because
pleasure's all
I
mine.
think what you shared today is such an important reminder that technically healing isn't weakness, it's awareness, it's honesty,
Hmm.
it's having the courage to look at our stories, patterns, and the pain we've carried without letting them become our permanent identity. And I think, especially for men, there's such a deep need right now for spaces where they actually feel safe enough to be human, not just strong. And what I appreciate about your perspective is that you don't just have the encouragement of people to stay trapped in their pain, you actually help them understand it, move through it, and ultimately reconnect to themselves in a deeper way.
Hmm.
And I think that's where real transformation actually lies. Not in pretending we're unaffected, but actually in learning that our experiences can become wisdom instead of just wounds we continue to live from. So, thank you for your honesty, your leadership, and the work you're doing in the world. And for everyone listening, if something in this conversation resonated with you, softened in you, or gave language to something you've been carrying, stick with that because awareness is where the healing often begins. And as always, I'll see you in the next episode.